Welcome to Jazz Zone Together, our new online jazz community where we will provide jazz education and classroom resources, interviews with jazz educators, artists, and celebrities, along with valuable teaching tips and repertoire suggestions. Today, we're pleased to welcome American jazz singer Carmen Bradford. Carmen sang as the featured vocalist with the Count Basie Orchestra for many years and is now on the faculty of the San Francisco Conservatory of Music as part of their Roots Jazz and American Music program. Now I bring in Dick Dunscomb to conduct the interview with Carmen. Dick, it's all yours.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you. Wow, today is really special. Carmen Bradford, welcome.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure it is to be here with you, Dick. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's one that I've been looking forward to for a long time. And I know our viewers are going to be excited about it as well. Let's begin sort of in the beginning. We know that you grew up in a musical family, and that probably has led to your interest in music throughout. Would you please share with us some of those influences and how they drove you in your musical growth?
Well, my father is jazz trumpeter Bobby Bradford. He plays cornet and flugel as well, and he plays avant-garde jazz. And my mother is jazz vocalist, composer, and educator Melba Joyce. And my mother's father, Melvin Moore, was also a big band singer like my mother and myself. He sang with Lucky Millender's big band. He recorded with Dizzy Gillespie, had a couple of hits with Dizzy. He sang with the Ink Spots, toured with, oh goodness, I'm having a senior moment. I can't think of the other gentleman. Please forgive me, but it'll come to me later. But yes, he was a great tenor, and that's where my mom and I got our voices from, I believe.
Well, that is some history. My gosh, no wonder. Yeah. It's also interesting, I think, for our viewers to know how you grew, who your teachers might have been, and maybe talk a little bit about that.
Well, and I always knew that I wanted to sing. Even at the age of 4, I was absolutely in love with R&B music. My parents never influenced my brothers and I either way. We just listened to, what was on the radio playing in Southern California in the early 1960s, which was a lot of Motown music. But of course, my mother, being a jazz vocalist, she sang, practiced and sang standards every day. My dad, of course, practiced every day, in the bathroom mirror, looking at his embouchure and everything. So, but I heard jazz music every single day. And when I turned 8 years old and started doing chores like dusting around our house on Saturday mornings, my mother would always play jazz all day. So I listened to a lot of Tony Bennett, a lot of Ella Fitzgerald, Sarah Vaughan, Carmen McRae, Antonio Carlos Jobim, Frank Sinatra, just all of the greats. And I think it was kind of building in my brain. And when I reached the age of about 16, I think I decided that Billie Holiday could really sing, and Ella and Sarah. I think my ear was ready to receive it at 16. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you're listening to one kind of music at a very young age, like when you think the Beatles are just the end and just be all, right? And then all of a sudden you hear something else and it's like, oh, well, that's got something else going on. I think I like that. So I think my ear was ready to receive all of that. And ever since then, I've just been kind of working on it, a little bit. But in high school, I sang in the Madrigals group and the Chamber Singers. And so classical background, kind of thought for about 5 minutes I wanted to sing classical music, and studied with Edward Boatner, who is the stepfather of Sonny Stitt.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a great opera coach in New York. I went and studied with him for a summer. And I think after that, it really made my decision that I just wasn't feeling it. And I just wasn't enjoying it as much as I enjoyed listening to jazz and just the whole thing, you know.
Well, our
The cascading curls and the whole girl thing kind of took over too. But when I heard the Count Basie Orchestra, um, along with Ella Fitzgerald, it was something that just happened to me as far as thinking this is something I want to do and going to symphony concerts at a very young age. My mother used to take us to hear the LA Philharmonic, the Los Angeles Philharmonic, where Zubin Mehta was. And I believe on one of those occasions there was a singer. And when she came out and had all of that, those instruments behind her, it must have been 80 instruments on stage, full symphony. And all of that just kind of stuck with me, you know? And I just made a mental decision to do it. It just kind of took me over, and I decided that that's what I wanted to do. And so I just never looked back and stayed very, very focused. I recall a time when my dad and I were watching television, and we were watching Johnny Carson, The Tonight Show, and Dionne Warwick was the guest, and she was really young. This is just when she, pardon me, was discovered by Burt Bacharach, right? And so she was singing, and I'm going to say this, no disrespect to you, Miss Warwick, none. Please don't take it with any offense. I'm sure you're going to watch this program, so I'm going to say to you, she opened her mouth to sing, and she had a lot of teeth, and her teeth were her mouth was very full, beautiful smile, but a lot of teeth and some crooked, right? So I remember turning to my dad saying, "You're going to have to get my teeth fixed because I'm going to go on Johnny Carson too, and I want my smile to be really beautiful, and that this is something that we have to take care of." I think I was about 9 or 10, and I still recall him looking at me like, "Talking about, you know?" But like I said, I was very focused and very determined. It's all that I wanted to do, and I just knew at an early age that this was it, you know. So that, of course, led to me singing more R&B in high school because I still loved it, even though I loved, you know, singing some jazz standards. But when I went off to college, I got into an R&B band, and they did a lot of jazz standards. And then I started singing that, and that's when I met Mr. Basie and begged him for a job, you know, telling him that he'd make millions of dollars if he'd hire me. And he said, "Really?" You know, I was part of the opening act when he came to Austin, Texas, where I was a student at Houston Tillotson University, a very small Black college. And so, you know, it was, you know, history being made ever since then.
What great stories. Oh my gosh. What a pathway. And what a great lesson for young aspiring vocalists who hear the importance of listening and how deep you went into that throughout your career. So we have arrived at the Count Basie Orchestra.
Uh-huh.
And that has made you one of the most visible women in the jazz field. We also know you toured with the orchestra beyond those years. Give us some highlights of working in the orchestra, working with Basie, and how that has driven your career.
Well, I have to back up a little bit and share with you the fact that, like I mentioned, when I met Mr. Basie, he was coming to Austin, Texas with the orchestra to do a concert, and part of the opening act was a group called Passenger. Now, Michael Mordecai, a trombonist and booking agent in Austin, Texas at the time, I didn't realize he was a booking agent. I just thought he was a local trombone player, you know? And so, anyway, it turns out that Mike was the one that booked the date. And when he spoke with Dee Askew, who is the now manager of the Count Basie Orchestra, but back then she worked for Willard Alexander, who was Basie's booking agent.
Mm.
And she shared with Mike that the group Passenger would be fine opening for the band, and that that would be great. And he said, well, we'd like to have a vocalist, a local vocalist, open the show with them. And she said, absolutely not. We already have a vocalist. His name is Dennis Rowland. He will be opening the show. We won't have any other singers on the show. He said, well, I want her on the show. And so they kind of went back and forth. And thank God, Dee said, okay, finally. And so I was part of the opening act when he came to Austin. And at that time, he was already riding on a motorized cart and couldn't go downstairs to the dressing room. There were only stairs in that theater at the time. So when I saw him sitting across the way, I was 22 at the time. I said, I'm going to go over and speak to him. I'm going to say something. I'm going to go over there and we're going to talk and I'm going to tell him about myself, So I got my nerve up and I walked over and I said, hi, Mr. Basie. My name is Carmen Bradford and I'm part of your opening act. And I think you'd make $1 million if you'd hire me. And he said, really, $1 million? I said, oh yeah, there's nothing like having a young lady on your show in a lovely dress. And there was this long pregnant pause. And so I said, so when I go out to sing, will you listen to me? And he said, sure, honey, I'll listen. So I went out and I did A Foggy Day and Lost in the Stars. Those were the only two tunes I really knew well and all the way through, So I came off stage and I said, well, what did you think? And he said, I think I'm going to hire you. I'm going to hire you. And I said, really? I said, okay, because I can quit school tonight. I can go to the dorm and pack up my stuff tonight. I'm ready. And he said, no, not tonight. He said, but I'll be in touch with you. I said, well, here's my phone number. I wrote down my phone number. I said, and I'm going to run to the dorm and get a cassette for you of me singing. I'm singing rock and roll on it, but, I just want you to remember me. And he said, okay, honey. So I ran to the dorm and got back in time, to see most of the show. And that was it for me, When Dennis Rowland walked out on that stage and he was just absolutely gorgeous and just so professional and just all those things I wanted to be and was standing in front of the band I wanted to work with, And I had an immediate connection with Mr. Basie. He was just very, very sweet and patient, I could tell, with me, And so after the show, I said, okay, Mr. Basie, here's my cassette and don't forget me now. And he said, I won't forget you. Don't worry, honey. So, 8 or 9 months went by and I didn't hear anything from him. And so I had moved out of the dorm by that time and I had 2 roommates and they were saying, that old man is not going to call you. He has forgotten about you. I said, no, he hasn't. So it's interesting because my birthday was the next day and my roommates were giving me a surprise party, which I was aware of. And they were starting to use paper and plastic to serve. So I kind of took over and turned it into another kind of party and acted surprised. Well, when I was blowing out my candles, I said, oh God, please let Count Basie call me tomorrow. And I really didn't give it another thought, The next day I was scheduled to go to Santa Fe, New Mexico, because I had a gig with John Mills, the leader of that band I was in, which is called Minor Miracle. So when I was getting ready to get in the car, my roommate said, there's some old man on the phone. And immediately I thought of my grandfather and I thought it might have been an emergency. So I went in and picked up the phone. I said, hello. And he said, is this the little girl that wants to work with me? This is Mr. Basie. And I said, is this Otis? And he said, no, this isn't. Who is Otis? No, this isn't Otis. This is Mr. Basie. And I said, Otis, I've been waiting for Mr. Basie to call me. Don't play on the phone like that. How could you do that? I said, I've got to go. I'm on my way to New Mexico to do my gig. So I hung up the phone. So I walked back out to the car and getting ready to get in again. And my roommate says, it's that old man again on the phone. So I thought, oh my God, it really couldn't be Mr. Basie. Wow. So I went back in the house and I said, hello. And he said, listen here, I'm going to call another little girl if you hang up on me again. Now, this is really Mr. Basie. Do you want to work with me or not? And I said, oh, Mr. Basie, I'm so sorry. I thought you were my cousin Otis. Oh my goodness. I said, how are you? And he said, I'm fine. How are you? And I said, well, I'm doing good. I've been waiting so long for you to call me. He said, well, I'm sorry about that. Why it took so long. But I'm calling you now and someone's going to contact you. very, very soon. And I said, well, when is that? And he said, very soon. I said, okay. So I said, well, how much does it pay? And he said, what do you care? I said, I don't care. My dad makes me ask, if I'm babysitting or if I have a gig or something. Can you imagine saying that, talking about babysitting to Count Basie? So there was another one of those long pauses, like I have made a mistake. I could feel him saying that. And I said, I don't care how much it pays. I don't care. And so he said, well, I will see you soon. I said, okay, well, thank you so much. I can't wait to see you. And thank you. So I hung up the phone, and that was a Monday morning. And then by Wednesday, I got a call from the great Sonny Cohn, who was the road manager and first trumpet player in the band. And he said, hello, this is Sonny Cohn. I'm the road manager with Count Basie Orchestra. Is this a little girl that is going to be working with us? I said, yes, it is. I said, how are you? He said, I'm fine, dear. He said, so you'll be leaving this Friday. I said, day after tomorrow? And he said, yes. He said, so I want you to, bring all of your big band arrangements. I said, I don't have any big band arrangements. I sing rock and roll. And he said, okay, we'll pack all your beaded gowns. I said, I wear Levi's and cowboy boots on stage and sweatshirts, So he said, well, just put a little rope around your suitcase and we'll see you on Friday. So he said, your ticket will be at United Airlines at the airport. So you make sure you're there. And, I said, okay, well, thank you so much. So I get to the airport on Friday, and there's no ticket for me. And about 30 of my friends, my college friends, joined me to see me off and wave me off. And when the agent said there's no ticket for you, I almost started to cry. And they said, wait a minute. So they all went to the ATM and pulled money out and bought me a round trip ticket to Boston. Is that the sweetest thing? So they said, and see, if it's not real, Carmen, you just come back and you can finish school with us. I said, oh, honey, no way. I'm not coming back. This is it. So I got to Boston, and the itinerary said that the band was staying at the Boston Park Plaza. So I got a taxi to the hotel, and they did have a reservation for me. So I checked in, and the band had not arrived yet. And so I went upstairs, and I had a room on the front side of the hotel. Big boulevard the hotel sits on, right? And these gigantic windows on the front side. So I'm leaning out. I said, surely they're all going to be coming down the street very shortly in limousines, separate limousines. And then all of a sudden in the distance, I saw this big stankin', fuming, popping Greyhound bus coming down the street. And I said, surely they are not in that. And sure enough, that bus pulled in front of that hotel, and I saw a bunch of Black men getting up. I said, there's some Black men, that's them. So I ran downstairs to the lobby. And by the time I got into the lobby, Mr. Basie was just coming in, and I said, hi, Mr. Basie, I'm here. And he said, yes, you are. He said, how are you? I said, well, there was no ticket for me, but my friends bought me a ticket, so I'm here. He said, well, we'll take care of that and reimburse you for that. I said, well, what are we going to do now? And then he looked at me like, does she see that we're just checking in? And he said, well, we're going to check in. And then I want you to meet us down here at 5:30, and you and I will get on the bus last. I said, okay. So everybody got on the bus at 5:30. Mr. Basie and I got on, and he said, gentlemen, this is our new little girl. And then he said, what's your name, honey? I said, Carmen. And he said, this is our new little girl, Carmen. And he spoke to me the entire year that I knew him that way, with just this, like I was 8 years old, always just like he was talking to a little bitty girl. And so then he went like this and pointed to all the guys in the band, and they got really quiet, and he made eye contact with everybody pointing. And then he said, when he got to Freddie Green, after making that big circle to the back of the bus, he said, don't even think about it, like that. And then he said, you sit right here, baby, okay? You sit right in front of me, like that. So He said, you know, we're working with Tony Bennett tonight. Do you know who that is? I said, yeah. I said, I only love him. And he said, well, we're working with him tonight. And he said, we're off tomorrow. And then the day after, we're going to go to Atlantic City and work with Sarah Vaughan at the Playboy Club. Do you know who Sarah Vaughan is? I said, oh my God, yes. And he said, well, I'll introduce you to her because she doesn't like little girls. So I'll introduce you. And I thought, what an odd thing to say. But I think it was the fact that I was just a young singer, you know, or maybe she just didn't like kids, but her daughter is the same age as me. So I've never really got the full story on that. But the show was fantastic that night with Tony Bennett. And the next morning, I have to share this one more story with you, and then you can ask me your next question. So the next morning, I get a call from the gentleman that traveled with Mr. Basie. And he said, Mr. Basie would like to see you this morning in about 20 minutes. I said, okay. So you just come to his room. I said, okay. So I didn't think anything of that, you know? So right when I was getting ready to leave my room, my father called and he said, well, Carmen, how was it last night? I said, they worked with Tony Bennett and we're going to work with Sarah Vaughan tomorrow night. And I said, it is something. He said, well, how is the band? I said, they're so old. He said, what are you talking about? I said, all of them are ancient and there's maybe one or two that are 60, but all the rest are at least 100. And he said, Carmen, don't let me hear you talk like that again. Do you realize what this is? Do you realize where you are? And I said, well, yeah. He said, well, I just want you to understand how important this is and how serious this is. It's just amazing. And I said, okay, of course, I realize that. He said, well, what are you getting ready to do? I said, I'm getting ready to go to Mr. Basie's room. He wants to see me. And my dad said, what the hell for? And I said, that tone completely changed then, right? So I said, I don't know. He just wants to see me. He said, let me tell you something. If he tries to touch you, you just knock him out and run. I said, what? He said, I mean it. If he tries to touch you, you just knock him down and you just run and head out that door. I said, I am not going to beat up Count Basie and I have not sung a note yet. He said, did you hear what I said? I said, yes. He said, I mean it, Carmen. He said, what the hell could he want to speak with you about this, you know, at this time of morning? I said, I don't know. He said, well, when you leave, you call me. You call me back and let me know what's going on. I said, okay, Dad. So he said, I mean it. I said, okay. So I went to Mr. Basie's room and the gentleman that traveled with him opened the door and he said, come on in, honey, go on in the bedroom. Mr. Basie's in there. I said, okay. I thought, oh my God, this is happening. I'm having to go into his bedroom. What is this about? So I went in. His suite was absolutely magnificent, by the way. And he had on these beautiful, beautiful silk pajamas, matching blue silk pajamas, and had this matching robe. It was a little deeper color blue with a monogram CB on the lapel, right? And then he had on velvet slippers with a monogram circle like this with CB on it. And he just looked like old money. He really did. And so he was sitting on the bed, Dick, and he had this beautiful, breakfast table with linen, of course, white linen, and so much silver and crystal. It was just, I cannot express to you how lovely it was. So he said, sit down, honey. So I sat across from him in a chair. And so he said, did you have breakfast already? Do you want some breakfast? I said, oh, no, I'm fine. I had breakfast. Thank you. And he said, well, what did you think of the show last night? I said, it was so great. It's just the greatest thing I've ever seen. And I can't wait to sing. And he said, well, it's going to take about 3 or 4 weeks for Eric Dixon and Dennis Wilson to write your arrangements. So, let me know what you want to sing, your 2 numbers. Okay. And I said, okay. So then he said, so what are you going to do today since it's our day off? And I said, well, I thought I'd buy my friends, that came to the airport with me, buy them some souvenirs. And I said, that's about it. And he said, oh, that's nice. He said, well, come over here and sit next to me. And I said, okay. So I sat next to him on the bed. I said, this is going to happen. I'm going to have to beat up Count Basie, and I've not sung a word. So I sat next to him and he said, no, come closer. And he was patting the bed like this. come closer, come closer. And so I said, okay. So I was right next to him and he was on my left. So he pulled my right hand over his lap. I said, okay, this is it. I'm going to belt him. I'm going to belt him. I'm going to beat up Count Basie. And then he leaned his shoulder on my shoulder and reached into his robe pocket, his left pocket on his robe, and put something in my hand and closed my hand up. And I opened my hand. He said, now go shopping and come back and show me what you bought. I said, what? He said, yeah, come go buy some things for your friends and come back and show me what you got. And I said, well, okay. So I went shopping and I bought a bunch of crap, foam fingers because I was in Boston and snow globes, just a lot of crap, t-shirts, you name it. So I came back to his room and I walked in and again, the gentleman said, go on in the room. Mr. Basie's in there in the bedroom. I said, okay. He said, well, show me what you bought. So I dumped the bag out, this huge shopping bag. And he wanted to see everything I got. And he said, well, did you bring me any change? And I said, was I supposed to bring you some change? And he said, no, honey, I just thought I'd ask. I said, oh, okay. He said, well, this was fun. He said, let's do this on our days off, okay? We don't have to tell anybody what we're doing, but you just go shopping. You come back and show me what you bought, and that's what we'll do on our days off, okay, honey? And I said, okay. So, but like I said, he always talked to me like I was a very, very young girl. And I'll never forget once my arrangements were written and I did my first performance, I sang, I let a song go out of my heart and I should have been singing A Foggy Day, but the introductions and the keys were almost the same, they were so close. And so I sang the tune I wasn't supposed to be singing and I turned and looked at him. I'll never forget it. And he went like this, and then it finally came to me where I should be singing and then I came in, but that was my first performance, but I just had to share that with you.
Oh, wow. What a great insight into Count Basie. And Carmen, I have to say, you are a fabulous storyteller.
Oh,
that is just great. It just shows through your love for the music and your beauty. It's just incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, let's talk about your recording career, because I know that you recorded with a who's who in jazz. And maybe you could tell us about some of those most memorable recording memories.
Well, my first recording was with the Count Basie Orchestra, and that album was Long Live the Chief. It was scary and exciting, and my only regret is that my vocal track was not a little louder. I was still very young and not brave enough to say, hey, turn me up in that track, but I'm very proud of that. And the second album I did was The Legend, The Legacy, the Count Basie Orchestra, and that was with Frank Foster, which was incredible because I recorded Young and Foolish, and Frank Foster wrote the arrangement, and it is exquisite. And I feel like it was such a launching pad for me with Frank's arrangement, though, that tune was made great by Dinah Washington, and then later Diane Shure recorded it, but my arrangement was the best, I believe. Frank Foster was so brilliant. What a genius arranger he is for singers, he just is the kind of arranger that leaves you so much space to sing. I feel like he took time and knew my abilities as a vocalist, what I could and could not do, and left me space to do everything, and knew that I loved to hold notes, and everything underneath me that he wrote was absolutely exquisite. And I miss him to this day. I truly do. But Frank Foster gave me wings. He really, really did. It changed my life. Of course, Mr. Basie changed my life as well, But after that arrangement, things just really took off in my career, I believe. And after that, I recorded with the great George Benson on his album, Big Boss Band. I wasn't supposed to sing on that album, but it was part of the deal. And I'm so glad that the Basie organization was as pushy as they were. Thank you, Aaron Woodward, for that, because it was just incredible working with George, and quite a challenge. I'm writing a book, and I'm gonna probably leave that portion out of it because it's got a little drama, and I want to have future employment with people. So that's not going to be able to go in there until I'm about 80, Lord willing, you know. But that was a wonderful experience. But performing with the different people that I've had the opportunity to perform with, you know, from Nancy Wilson to you know, opening for Tony Bennett, opening for Frank Sinatra, having a little dinner with Frank Sinatra, just me and Frank in his dressing room at the reopening of the Chicago Theater. I had gone in his dressing room, and Steve and Edie were in there. And Steve Lawrence and Edie Gourmet for your youngsters that are watching. And then I said, I just would like to say hello to Mr. Sinatra. And they said, oh, sure, honey. So they stepped out of the dressing room, and he said, come on in. And he said, well, how's it going with the band? He said, you look beautiful. What are you singing tonight? He asked me all the tunes I was singing, how much I got to sing. And he said, how's it going, you know, being out on the road with all of the guys? And I said, it's okay sometimes. You know, I said, I miss, you know, having my girlfriends around. He said, but they'll be there. He said, this is important, what you're doing. And I know you're going to sound fantastic, but you've got to take care of business now while the opportunity is now. I said, okay. He said, would you like some chicken soup? I'm having some soup. I said, and normally, you know, I would have said, oh, no, I don't want to disturb you. I said, yes, please. So that was just such a wonderful memory, you know, those moments that are just priceless, you know, and spending time with Ella Fitzgerald, you know, early on when I first joined the band, when we were on tour and had dates with her in London, and a date in the U.S. At Carnegie Hall, where I got to chat with her. After I came off stage, I went to her dressing room because the door was cracked, and I said, Miss Ella, I just wanted to see if you were okay. I really wanted to say, what did you think? Were you listening to me? But I didn't. I just said, are you okay? And she was already dressed down in this beautiful white bugle beaded gown, and she was kind of pacing the floor. And I said, was everything all right? Can I get you anything? And she said, I just hope they like me. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, who are you talking about? And she said, the audience. I said, well, who doesn't love you? What do you mean? And she said, well, baby, I don't do well all the time. I said, well, when? When is that? I just don't do well all the time. And of course, I didn't want to, you know, continue to badger her. But I said, well, I've never heard anybody say anything but great things about every performance of yours. She said, well, and she was kind of rubbing her hands together, just, you know, it was really interesting to see, you know. And then later I found myself doing the same thing on stage, wondering the same thing and hoping, you know, that things would go well. But I spent time with Nancy. I had planned, my plan was to, earlier this year, I had some wonderful funding in place, what I thought was in place, because I was going to do a Nancy Wilson tribute album, and my funding fell through. So I'm back at square one trying to get that done, and never thought I'd be a singer that would do a GoFundMe, but I'm certainly not going to ask anybody for money during a pandemic. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to figure out another way to get that done. But I have a Ella Fitzgerald show, a symphony show that I do. And I also have a symphony show that I do with the great Byron Stripling, trumpet player and entertainer and singer. So we'll be doing that in 2022. We'll be back on schedule doing those.
Well, it sure sounds like you're not going to be taking a break at any time soon. Oh. And I want the people to know, not only are you a fabulous singer, but you're also a teacher. And if you would, tell us a little bit about the San Francisco Conservatory of Music and your role with them.
Okay, well, I'm the head of the jazz voice department there. The program is in short, is RJAM, but it's Roots Jazz and American Music. And it's a very small program, very hands-on. Before the coronavirus, I was flying in once a month for 3 days at a time teaching voice. Now I'm teaching remotely, of course, from home, and our faculty is just packed with some of the greatest jazz musicians, I think, of our generation. And it's just a very unique program, very hands-on, which I'm sure some of the kids or all of them don't appreciate at times because it's such a small, uh, um, very cozy program that we're in your face all the time because we don't have a lot of students. So you get us full on, whether you want to or not. You know what I mean? It's the one wonderful advantage of being of having only four vocal students. So you get our full attention. I call it finishing school, because we don't teach in the I would say regular or normal way. I certainly don't because there's so many things that you need to learn at the beginning that are so important in the event that I'll say, are discovered possibly early. Just little things about your actual performance, being on stage, your preparation, your phrasing, your breath control. So it's just and Claire D is also the other vocal teacher there, who is absolutely fantastic. And I couldn't do it without her. But between the two of us, we are both able to balance and give and devote all of our time to these four young ladies, and they're all in different levels of their vocal abilities. But everybody is a great singer. Mm-hmm. One of our young ladies just got the Composers Award for Jen. Her name is Lola Miller Hinline, and she's a very talented young lady and writes like what Billy Strayhornish, just amazing. And she's like 18, just turned 18. Really incredible. So we're so very proud of her. But we've got some really great talent, instrumentalists as well. Matt Wilson is one of the teachers there, drummer Matt Wilson and David Sanchez, saxophonist. We have Chad Lefkowitz Brown, Julian Lage, just a host of incredible people with just as many wonderful stories as I have. So we are a wonderful family. Joshua Redmond is our new artistic director, and the great Jason Hainsworth runs the program. And he's doing such a great job under insane circumstances. Half of our kids are working from home. The other half have just moved in the dorm recently and coming to school, of course, with masks on, but we've got all of this new high-tech stuff in each practice room. So, we're covered through the ventilation system, and the sound system is great. So you're tuning into your accompanist that's in another room. So, and you're on screen, of course, using Ring Central, Zoom. So it's quite a production, and we're just trying to get through it the best we can and trying to keep everyone engaged, including the teachers, because, this is not easy, Dick, as you know. It's just not trying to do everything, on camera like this, to have the students stand back far enough so I can see how she's breathing. And, it's been quite interesting, but I'm looking forward to Thanksgiving vacation.
Well, that sounds like a fabulous program, Carmen.
It is.
And I'm so let me just interject a personal story here. Okay. I had the pleasure of meeting you, thanks to my wife, Jackie, who met you earlier at the Gen Conference in New Orleans. Mm-hmm. And you were so kind to come to my session that I did that day. And you have been just such a wonderful person to so many people throughout the years. I just can't thank you enough. And I know that you value the Gen organization. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, you know, what I love so much about Jen, you know, once you experience it for the first time, I think it's so exciting for kids to have the opportunity and go and be among some of the greatest jazz musicians of all time while they're at the next table to you next while you're eating breakfast. You know, being exposed to so much music in just those few days that you have an opportunity to do that. You know, the only thing I wish would happen more is that I wish that Jen or your viewers would think about donating funds for kids in impoverished communities to come to these. You know, they might have a sagging music program. There are a lot of Black kids that are not experiencing this, and that is always a concern of mine, that I don't see enough Black kids there. I don't see enough, you know, kids that get the same opportunities that these kids that are coming from other countries. Of course, their countries are supporting them. You know what I mean? A lot of them are being supported by their governments and stuff. But it would be so great if people could donate at least buses. You know, how much could 20 hotel rooms be for, you know, a kid that it lives 80 miles to come and, you know, stay the night and be, you know, get a bus. And even if it's there, even if they're just coming for the day, they need to experience that, you know, and they need to see someone that is the same color as they are doing great things. They need to see greatness like that. It's just so very important. And even kids that are in the cities where we are, you know, a bus, it's a bus ride and lunch, you know what I mean? Or lunch and dinner, pizza, we're talking. Let's get these babies there, you know? Let's get more babies there to experience this music, because if we don't get them at the young age that they are going to be lost to some other kind of music. I'm not trying to say anything's wrong with the music that's out there today, but we are it.
Yes, ma'am.
This is it, you know? But I love that, you know, once you experience Jen, they have been so very welcoming. I think they make things as affordable as they possibly can. And people are very giving. The musicians that are there are very giving. They don't mind stopping. You see kids with their eyes open, and they've listened to 100 CDs of an artist. And finally, there's nothing like seeing the look on these kids' faces when they see their leaders and people, that musicians that they've absolutely loved all their life. There's nothing like it. And I cannot thank you enough for your master class that I attended. It was masterful. You are masterful, sir. And I thank you ever so much. I'm so glad that Jackie said, my husband's going to be, you know, teaching in about an hour. I said, I'm coming. She was selling it, and it was so, I'm so glad I got to experience it, and you were just a jazz jewel, and I thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. This has just been wonderful. I have enjoyed this interview so very much, and I know our viewers are going to just have the happiest and most informative time that they've had in this one. Wow. Now, there's only one more question I have for you, and that is one that I think everybody would join with me in saying, and that is, would you honor us with a song today?
Oh, okay. They try to tell us we're too young to really be in love. They say that love's a word we've only heard and can't begin to know the meaning of. And yet we're not too young to know this love will last though years may go. And then someday they may recall too young at all.
Oh, wow. So beautiful.
Thank you.
So beautiful, Carmen. Thank you so much for today.
Oh,
And
my pleasure.
please stay safe and be well. Keep making your beautiful music.
You too, and thank you ever so much. Thank you, Bob. And we'll see you. We'll see you at gym.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carmen. To our viewers,
Oh,
we appreciate you joining us today and for being a part of Jazz Zone Together. We hope you found the presentation of real value. We hope you'll join us for future episodes. In the meantime, please stay safe and please keep making music.